You're watching Hellbent Holler live. Hello and welcome to Hellbent Holler Live. My name is Jesse, this is Joe, and we are glad to have you. This is our weekly show we do every Monday to hang out with our Hellbenders and kind of discuss all kinds of topics, paranormal, high strangeness, cryptids, ghosts, aliens, a little bit of everything.
Spooky stuff.
Spooky stuff. So we're going to get started. Let's see who is in the chat. Make sure you guys can hear us, and we will roll with the show.
Loud and clear.
Awesome. So we wanted to come into this with kind of a little topic today. We've noticed that over the past few months, there's been a weird rise in paranormal activity and people having encounters with cryptids. But before we get into that, I do want to remind you guys that we will be at the Tennessee Wildman and CryptidCon in McMinnville, Tennessee on August the 10th. And we're actually going to CryptidCon in Lexington, Kentucky on November 23rd and 24th. So if you are in those areas and can make it out to those, we would love to see you and meet you. So if you can make it, ticket information is in the description below. So you can go there, get your tickets, and come on out and check out one of those conferences. Now, let's get on with it.
Let's get on with it.
So we have noticed that there's been a huge uptick in people experiencing paranormal activity, whether it be ghosts, cryptids, or even UAP activity. And it seems like it's on the rise. And there could be a couple of explanations for that, but let's kind of explore some of those, what's been going on and why we think it's going on.
And it's not even, some of the stuff goes into like mainstream media. There's a lot of stuff hitting like mainstream news right now that's just weird as hell.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's also seems like every time somebody tries to like come forward like on any sort of social media with any sort of like paranormal or just out of the ordinary experience, there's a few people that are just like, wow, that's very interesting, try to get information. And then just the tidal wave of just BS hits them and just shuts down the conversation at that point. It seems like even though that happens, there's more and more and more people coming forward with like weird stuff. You know what I'm saying? It seems like it is accelerating to a certain extent. Now, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about how, thank you for that, Catherine K. We
Thank you,
greatly appreciate
Catherine.
it.
That's
So,
awesome.
thank you so much. We were talking about how certain areas that were active seem like they are quiet now. We were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Remember, Suji had that comment about like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But that they were, to back up a little bit, a friend of ours that does a thing called Cryptid Response had talked about how he thought maybe it was quiet because like the scouting aspect of everything was over with and the war was going to be
So
starting.
they're like
soon.
coalescing their
Yeah,
forces and getting ready for like a
so-
siege almost.
So, and that seems to be happening in some areas around our region, but globally, it seems like there's a bunch of weird stuff going on. You've been more in tune with it lately than I have, as far as kind of like watching this stuff kind of develop in real time.
Yeah.
And it just seems like, and it's weird too, because there's so much stuff going on. This is not a slow news cycle by any stretch of the imagination. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't think it's been a slow news cycle for about 8 years now.
Yeah, but at the same token, they, and what's even stranger is all of our cameras just went off as we started talking about this, like all of them. Weird.
Do you think the siege has begun on
I
Hellbent
don't
Manor?
know. That was just very weird timing. I'm going to pull that up while I talk.
Okay.
But there's just a plethora, and there's just like a widespread just weirdness, like that seems to be taking place like everywhere. You're hearing more and more people come forward with more and more different varieties of just like high strangeness that's being reported. And it's weird stuff. I don't know if anybody saw, there was a story in the New York Post within the past couple of days about some terrified teens spot Bigfoot with glowing eyes in Louisiana forest. Call 911 for rescue.
So this got picked up by the Daily Mail and then the
Yeah.
New York Post. So obviously it's getting a little legs. This whole
Mhm.
story is getting a little legs and making international news.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that this is a Bigfoot story that also includes a supernatural facet, like the glowing red eyes.
Well, the police got called to it. Now that particular spot of the woods in Louisiana has been a hot spot for years.
Mhm.
There's been rumors of weird stuff going on around there for years. And what these kids saw was a 5-foot tall, hairy creature with glowing red eyes growling at them from the tree line. They saw it several times. So they got to the point where they were afraid to leave. They definitely didn't want to stay. They had a little bit of cell signal. They placed a 911 call. It got routed to the local parish police department, sheriff's office, and they got some officers out there and then got them out. So everybody started to go, well, 5 feet tall. Well, that's not a Bigfoot. These people are just, these kids are just making this up. And I'm going, if they were going to make it up, it seems like they would have a stereotypical Bigfoot.
They would say it was like 7, 8
7,
feet
8
tall.
feet tall,
Yeah.
like growling at us from the tree line. That's not the case. It's a 5-foot tall creature. And in that particular spot in Louisiana, there's a lot of smaller, upright creature, hominids, whatever you want to call it. But that's traditionally what's been reported in that area. They don't usually trigger calls to the police department.
So that leads you to ask the question, why this story? Why now? If there's been a lot of encounters in that area, why is this story getting picked up as opposed to those encounters that people had years ago at this point?
Well, again, generally they don't. This is pretty rural Louisiana. People don't usually call the police down there for stuff like that. And let's just be honest too. If these were teenagers in the woods, they were probably drinking. You know what I'm saying? So, and that makes it even more strange that they went the route of feeling they needed to call the police at that point. I even thought, were they out there doing something possibly more than drinking? Were they imbibing in some hallucinogens or anything like that? That would have made its way into the story.
Yeah, that was a part of
because
it.
that's pretty sensational. That would have made its way into the story, and then all of a sudden it would have been like a comical slice of life thing. But instead,
And I
it's
think
just,
they would do that also. Like if there was any sort of substance involved, wouldn't they say that so that they don't drum up a lot of
they
controversy
would,
and fear?
So, they would, and they just said that the sheriff's office even basically just reported it as is. 17, 18-year-old kids were out there. We received a call. This is what they said. We sent officers there and escorted them out of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
None of this like taking hallucinogens in the woods is bad for you folks. Don't do this. Nothing like that at all. Basically, just we received this call. We dispatched officers. The kids were out safely. It's very cut and dried, like police report.
Right.
And it just seems like there's a lot of one-off stuff like that going on right now. And it just seems like our email is like blown up. Our email is multiple reports every day,
And
to the point right now that we've lost control of the email. If you've emailed us, you ain't hearing from us anytime soon, because it's to the point now where I don't even know how to address it. Start at the back, work our way forward. And as I start to if you start at the top and work your way down, there's multiples coming in. You just never, it's a mess right now.
Well, it also seems like a lot of those emails are getting stranger and stranger. People are having weirder encounters. It's not like your typical Bigfoot encounter where it's, hey, I was in the woods and I just saw this creature and it disappeared, like it ran away. Yeah. There's a lot of, I guess, co-phenomenon that's going on with it.
Curtis Whitaker, thank you for that.
Thank you, Curtis. That's awesome. Thank
you so much for that, Curtis. We greatly
But there's a lot
appreciate
of
thank you so much.
Yeah,
keep
awesome.
thanking the man. Don't move on.
Thank you.
Give him the thanks that he's due.
Thank you, Curtis Whitaker.
Thank you, Curtis.
Awesome. But there is a lot of co-phenomenon with it too. That there's orbs, there's UAP activity. It's all kinds of weird stuff, and it seems like those types of encounters are happening more and more as well.
That's what I'm talking about. You're not getting the stereotypical weekly world news
Bat Boy,
or the stereotypical toothless hillbilly. The UFO came down. They took me. These very one-dimensional stories. You're not getting that. You're getting, like you said, extremely fleshed out, pretty complex accounts that don't seem to fit the usual narrative that you would think for a hoax, and it's getting attention, and you would not expect it to get attention right now. Usually those stories get trotted forward when there ain't nothing else going on,
and there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and it's just so weird that that's getting picked up. And I'm wondering if we're seeing these stories on a national level. That's probably the tip of the iceberg. Because I'm telling you right now, we've never gotten this many and this variety of reports ever. Now, granted, our profile's a little higher.
Right. So people are seeing us more, maybe reaching out to us more.
But you have to take that. But a lot of these are not, wow, I just found your channel. Let me tell you something that happened to me 20 years ago. It's, this just happened to me, or this is happening to me right now. And it's some wild stuff, man. And and a lot of people are going, sometimes you get people that have had experiences with high strangeness their entire lives. That's not what most of this is.
No, a lot of these are one-offs.
A lot of these are people that are just going, I've never really had anything like this happen to me before. And now for the past few months, this is going on my property. And like you said, there's always these associated phenomena with it. And when I say always, it's pretty much damn near always. It's not just lights in the sky. It's not just I'm finding footprints on my property. It's not just something's coming up and smacking my house in the middle of the night. There's all of this stuff going on. And it's so, and I even sat down and went, is there like a cultural shift now? Is the Skinwalker Ranch TV show, has it had that much of an impact on like how people view the phenomenon?
So is it like planting these things, or is it helping people
because
guide their thoughts on
finding Bigfoot's all about Bigfoot?
Yeah.
Expedition Bigfoot, all about Bigfoot. They get a little
and
weirder
Skinwalkers
stuff.
cross spectrum.
Yeah, ghost hunters, it's all about ghosts. Skinwalkers just all over the damn board. And I'm going, is it just planting that seed in people? But I don't think that's the case. A lot of the people that are contacting us are not cryptid and paranormal enthusiasts. They are people who are going, I started looking at this stuff recently after what happened to me, and none of this makes sense to me. have you ever heard of somebody having footprints on their property? And then I'm also seeing strange lights, and I'm just going, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens, and it's happening more and more and more often at this point. So
one thing I'm kind of noticing too is a lot of these reports are coming from people who are in areas where there's actually a sizable human habitation, where there's actually a lot of people. There's nearby towns, there's nearby neighborhoods. These are a lot of reports that aren't coming from super remote areas. It's not like somebody is in the Canadian wilderness and they're backpacking out for days and then they're having these experiences. They're in areas where they're not far from other people and they're having these really extreme experiences.
And some of these areas, and it's weird because especially in the South, there's been so much development over the past few years. Some of these spots where people are experiencing this activity, it was a forest or a field not too terribly long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a new subdivision, it's a new neighborhood, and they're having these experiences. And I'm going, at first I was like, it's people from the city. They've never really lived in like a more rural environment. It ain't rural no more, man. They're in like a neighborhood and they're having these weird experiences. And I'm going, well, was the activity always there, but there was just nobody to see it? And now that there's people there, they're seeing it and they're experiencing it. Now they're reporting it.
If a cryptid calls in the woods
and nobody's there to see or hear it, did it really happen? So thank you for that, Bob Olson.
Thank you, Bob Olson.
Thank you, Bob Olson. We appreciate it. So I don't know. I don't know. This is one little slice of the world, obviously, but our little slice, we can't keep up. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can't keep up. If we had an unlimited budget and a helicopter, we could be out every single day and investigating a new report.
The helicopter?
Yeah, the helicopter. We could be out every day investigating something brand new and never catch up.
And we're kind of getting dragged in a bunch of different directions because there's so much phenomenon. It's like so many weird phenomenon going on in different places, and it's kind of all around, and it's so scattered. It's very strange. I think there's such a chaos element to it as well. I know that we're kind of encountering this with one of our research areas, a little distance away from it, they've proposed some sort of development. Yeah. So I'm wondering if that area is going to get very, very strange. I wonder if that development is going to kind of start pushing things into a small area and that the activity is going to increase, or if it'll go away completely. I
don't know. It's weird. It's very, very weird, but it's busy. I mean, it's really, really freaking. And it's weird right now because generally what we've experienced in the past is the middle of the summer, it's pretty slow. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, in previous years, we took off the hottest months of the year.
That's when we kicked off Dark Dive
and stuff like that, because there was just not that much going on. And it was insanely hot. And now that does not seem to be the case. It's just so weird. Our boy Grizz, thank you for being a member, Grizz, my man. Notice that our weirdness has died down in the summer as usual around here. Exactly right. But overall, it's been on the uptick nationwide. Do you think because there's more people now? I don't know. There's been some sort of shift where maybe it's a combination of the activity's got to be happening or it wouldn't be reported.
Right.
So.
And there might be one here or there that might be some sort of figment of somebody's imagination, or they're
I'm sure that happens all the time.
There.
But
it can't be that all of these things are that.
And it's you see that with Bigfoot reports all the time. People always argue with me and go, "You guys are idiots for going out at night looking for this." Most Bigfoot reports take place during the daytime, and I'm going, because in order to have this happen, a Bigfoot report, you have to have a Bigfoot, you have to have somebody to see it, and then somebody to report it to. Mm-hmm. Most people are out in these areas during the daytime. That's why most of the reports get generated from daytime human activity.
Because as we've discovered, it's very dangerous and difficult to hike around at night.
At night, but it doesn't. We seem to encounter far more activity at night. Mm-hmm. And the people who actually go out and kind of do this stuff at night agree at that point. So I don't know if I think it's somewhat that there's more people there to have the sightings, but just overall, it's not just people in new areas. It's people that are going, I've lived here for 40 years and nothing has ever happened to me until now. So I don't know. It might be a combination of all of these, but at the end of the day, there's people who've never experienced this stuff before that are experiencing it.
Yeah.
And we got an email today of somebody just going, right before we got on here, he's going, I don't want to come forward. I don't want to talk. I don't want to come forward. I don't want to talk. I don't want my name out there. And
we get
it's a phone book. It's like a literal phone book of stuff that's going on. And this person does not come across crazy, at least as far as a written email goes.
And we get a few emails like this where people do not want to talk about this publicly at all. They don't want this shared. They just kind of want to, kind of bounce it off of us because this is the closest thing that they have that they can report it to.
Yeah.
That we've kind of experienced a lot of this stuff. We've witnessed a lot of this stuff. We have a fair amount of knowledge on what to do in these situations. We're not experts by any means, but they just kind of want to bounce this off us because this is a shocking thing for most people.
Yeah.
They're not embroiled in it like we are all the time. These people are normal people with normal lives, and this just shocks them to their core,
Yeti, I put this up a minute ago. Are you talking about memberships or subscribing? I haven't heard of anybody having trouble re-upping on memberships, but I'll put that up there just in case. If you're having any trouble, shoot me an email.
Just let us know.
Put Ghetto Yeti in the subject line, and I will look for it, and then I will see if we can try to figure something out. Arcane Discoveries, how are you? Have not seen you in a bit. Hello, old friends. Are y'all coming to the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference? Have y'all seen the supposed Dogman photo from Maine? Quite intriguing. I don't know if we're coming to the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference just because we're doing the Tennessee Wildman and Jesse speaking there, and then we're going to be appearing at CryptidCon. So I don't know if we're going to be able to hit anywhere where we're not like appearing at. But
because we have to do some traveling for those.
But we've got some friends who are at Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference, so we're going to try to do it. I just don't know how likely it is we're going to be able to do it. Are you going to be there? Let us know. And thank you for that, by the way. Thank you. Hawk. Thank you for that, Hawk.
Oh, coming in hot.
Coming in hot. Where I used to live at, fall through spring was the hot times, and summer things happen, but not like the other seasons. Traditionally, that's what we've experienced, and right now, that's not the case. Stuff around us, areas where we have looked into before and we have spoken to people before are now getting in touch with us going, it's insane around here right now.
I think that's kind of what led to people thinking that these things could migrate, that during these hot southern summers, you weren't really experiencing a lot of Bigfoot activity. And why would you? I mean,
and there might be a migratory aspect of it. But I mean, we're looking at some areas where I'm going, if they're migrating in and out, you'd see them coming and going.
Yeah.
Some of these areas are just isolated. They're not huge wildernesses, but it's repeated reports that match each other up just constantly that seem to be coming out of there. And it's not just the cryptid and the UFO stuff. You got in touch with me the other day going, I'm noticing a disturbing trend with some of the groups that you were on. And how did you describe them? They are cemetery enthusiast groups. Is that it?
So I am a part of several cemetery enthusiast groups on Facebook, like as one does. That's a normal thing to do, right? And there have been a couple of posts over the past couple of weeks that people are going to these mausoleums and these cemeteries, and they're visiting and taking photos and hanging out.
Mostly like a photography thing. They go and they take photos of like old, above ground, like, tombs and statuary and stuff like that.
Well, in the past few weeks, there have been a couple of posts from different people in different parts of the country where they're going to these mausoleums and these cemeteries and graves that have been there and people who have been entombed for a very long time, like 30 years. These are old graves are starting to leak. Mm-hmm. They're starting to seep. So I have one of the photos of this, and it's not that grotesque.
It's not that graphic. It's not that, but it's gross.
It's gross. Here, let's see this. But that's one of the photos that was posted on the group that someone took of one of these graves, and that grave is from 1990. So that's an old one. And
then all of a sudden, this black oily substance starts coming out of the tomb.
But that's not the only one.
There's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them.
You don't want to get too graphic with it, but some people were going, well, this sometimes happens a few months to a year after somebody's interned, mm-hmm. and sometimes it's a leak where the body is going through a natural stage of decay, but not 30, 40, 50-year-old. And then somebody else even went, oh, it's where the metallic
Oh, it's rust in water.
that's coming out, and people are going, this is not rusty water. I don't know what this is, but it has a biological aspect to it almost. It feels oily. And I'm going, who the hell would touch that? But I guess somebody did. And I just went, that's very disturbing. And Jesse's going, oh, and there's a bunch of them and they're all recent.
Oh, yeah. It's over the past couple of weeks. They've just been posting them one after the other. And it's all over the country that this is happening. Mm-hmm. And I sent it to Joe and I was like, this is like a Return of the Living Dead kind of thing.
There is a Return of the Living, and it's funny because it was just Return of the Living Dead Day.
Yes.
For those of you who follow me on my very non-existent Facebook page, and I can't remember. It's
July 3rd.
Is it July 3rd? Yeah, it is July 3rd because it July 3rd is when the movie takes place. Everybody starts posting Return of the Living Dead memes. But I see this and I'm going, this has got like a real creepy zombie feel to it, man. What the heck? So Jesse's been looking at all of them, and you never know. Sometimes stories come out. Remember the Sky Trumpet story?
Yes, that kind of went viral, and
there was a real phenomenon that got buried by all the fakes and the knockoffs and people trying to kind of jump in on it just to get views and clicks.
But that definitely happens with the UAP.
But this is not getting
this is just a cemetery enthusiast group.
These are not cryptid or paranormal people. These are people that go to cemeteries and they research old graves. They do cleanup. They take photos, and all of a sudden they're all talking about this stuff leaking out of tombs all of a sudden. And it's weird, and it's very weird. And that may not be anything, but I just went, as soon as you told me that, I just latched onto that. And I don't know why, but I instinctively went, man, stuff's getting weird out there.
That is weird.
It's accelerating out there. And I'm not saying that the reanimated dead are going to start clawing their way out of the tomb. But I'm not as certain that's not going to happen as I was maybe a couple of years ago. Thank you for that, Pork Chop. Have y'all ever considered researching some of the famous spots where people have gone missing in your area? Or is that outside the mission, like the Appalachian Trail, the Great Smoky Mountain National Forest?
The problem with the Great Smoky Mountain National Forest is it's so, especially since COVID, it's so busy.
It's the busiest national
There's some trailheads where you have to like make a reservation to park your car months in advance to go and hike a trailhead. And it used to not be like that. I'm from Western North Carolina, and I've been in and out of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park my whole life. And it used to not be like that at all. But with the huge influx of population into the South, it's just overrun. So in order for us to actually do a real good investigation, we couldn't do it out there because there's just so many people. There are areas of the park that is pretty remote, but you have to hike probably about 20 miles in. There's a swath of wilderness we really want to check out one day. We're going to try to access it by boat, so we don't have to hike that 20 miles in. But it's just so busy, and there's a few missing 411 cases out of the national park that are very intriguing, and I'm interested in them, and I'd love to check them out. But there is that human element, and you're going to end up with a lot of human contamination of evidence because of that.
And there's one area where we have reached. It's the area where we saw the burning light. It's with the area where we got that thing swinging from the trees. It's that area where we found those weird glyphs in the ground. There are some weird disappearances through there. Some very weird disappearances through there. And we haven't really been able to talk about them publicly because anybody with Google would be able to clue in as to
exactly where we are.
And again, there's a lot of safety concerns up there. There have been some weird appearances up there. There have been a couple of people found deceased there that they have not been able to identify at all, and they don't know where they came from. And they were found in areas that was pretty strange to find a body in. And one of them, like Jesse always likes to talk about, they talk about how he was dressed in.
They use the phrase out of time. He was dressed in clothes from probably 70 years prior, but they were in great condition. He was in a suit. But they were contemporary of 70 years prior to when his body was found.
They were looking to see if there was any theater productions or any sort of like movie or TV productions up there that
because they didn't appear to be vintage.
Yes, they didn't appear to be
clothes.
vintage clothing. They
Yeah.
just seemed to be brand new clothing that did not seem, they seemed anachronistic. They did not seem as if they should be modern. And they were looking to see if maybe an extra had wandered off of set or if anything had been filmed up there, and they couldn't find anything.
They couldn't match dental records,
no ID on
fingerprints, anything. But yeah, that's still an unsolved case. When I was doing some research on some missing people in that particular area, I saw that and I just went crazy. I got Joe immediately. I was like, "You're not going to believe this, but I think we have a dead time traveler."
Yeah, I mean, that's literally what it sounds like.
And it's wild.
And if there was, and it's another one of these things, if there was ever any sort of resolution to it, it never made its way into the papers. And you would think a story like that, with that sort of information, if there was any sort of answer, they'd run a follow-up piece to it. No follow-up pieces to it.
But it is pretty close to the area where we saw that burning light. So is it a bridge too far to say that somebody's opening time portals?
That's weird. Brazliktig, I must think I pronounced that right. May the armor of God protect you both. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for that. Man. Thank you so much for that. We will take that. We will take that prayer gladly. Anybody who wants to pray for us, we'll take it, man. We can
take all the prayers we can get.
We can take all the prayers we can get at this point, man. Hawk. Guy I know that lived 15 miles north of where I would live was getting action all 4 seasons, even finding trackways in the snow. This area is in northeast Indiana. We always had more activity in fall and winter and early spring than any other time. But right now it's wild because I'm even like this, like a lot of people are staying indoors right now because it's so hot.
Yeah.
And they're still experiencing so much stuff. So I don't know. It might be, I'm going to be honest with you right now. It looks like a trend. It looks like a trend that we're seeing an increase in activity.
So do you think that when fall rolls around, because usually you and I experience more activity sort of in the fall, the winter time. Do you think that sort of trend is going to continue and the fall is just going to be, dare I say, bananas? It's
going to go bananas. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to continue like this. I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, right now there appears to be a pattern developing. There appears to be a pattern of more stuff occurring. People are talking about zombie juice, Tarman.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, when I saw that stuff and Jesse's going, I keep finding all of these stories on Reddit groups, Facebook groups, stuff like that. These are not paranormal groups. Everybody's talking about this stuff. And I'm just going like, what the hell, man? You know, some of them are reporting that they'll go there and they see it and then they come back later and it's just gone.
And Kaiju Ninja 1985 was asking that liquid coming out of the tomb, could it be embalming fluid?
From like that long ago? I mean, there ain't much left of that. I mean, and Stingray had said, I don't know what the comment is, that coffins are guaranteed. Here we go. Coffins are guaranteed not to leak.
Sorry, go ahead.
Not to leak for 75 years. If it seems people have been dying and getting buried for a hot minute now, you know what I'm saying? That's not a new occurrence. So it seems like people would go. It seems like these cemetery enthusiasts, I'm assuming, spend a lot of time in cemeteries. Hence, that's why they're in the group, right?
There's probably 60 posts a day in that one group that I'm in.
So it seems like if this was something that just happened naturally, that these people would be the ones who know it, right?
Well, there was a lot of theories that people, there was a lot of responses to this, and a lot of theories, from the mundane to the comical. But I mean, a lot of people have never seen this before, and they've spent a lot of time. There was actually people that have worked in cemeteries and were caretakers of cemeteries, and they're like, this should not be happening. This is not normal.
Stingray wants to know if you've ever had any Smoky Mountain Chow Chow. What is that?
I have some in my refrigerator right now.
What is Smoky Mountain Chow Chow?
It is like a sweet and spicy pickled cabbage amalgamation.
Why is it called Chow Chow?
That's just what it's called. Cabbage, peppers, a little bit of onion, vinegar, sugar.
See, I'm from up near West Virginia. We didn't have fancy stuff like that.
Mustard.
Potatoes and turnips, all we had. So
turmeric.
We didn't put on airs like you Southern Appalachian folks.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Darcy Parks, I want to say thank you for that. A little help
in
hand. I really appreciate that.
We'll put that for the zombie ammunition fund that apparently we need to start preparing for, the oncoming zombie apocalypse. Somebody said Tarman, which is that zombie in like Return of the Living Dead. As soon as I saw that stuff, that's the first thing that flashed to my mind. And then I'm just like, what the hell's going on here? So you're seeing a lot of these, and you're like, not hundreds, but quite a few. And it seems like this is out of the ordinary, the way everybody's commenting on it. And I don't know why, but I instantly, like I was saying before, just went I wonder if that's tied into the increase. Are we building towards something here?
I don't know.
And if we're building towards something, I don't see black goo coming out of tombs being a positive development. You know what I'm saying? I don't see where that's something that people look at and go, this is a good sign. All right, this is what we've been looking for. We're heading in the right direction here.
Yes.
Yes, this
Finally.
is exactly what we need.
Now we could be connecting to things that are completely unrelated at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. You know what I'm
But
saying?
it was just kind of weird.
But here's my next thing, though. Now we need to look at when they've publicly identified these cemeteries. And you always have to kind of approach this stuff cautiously.
Mhm.
But I mean, you're in these groups. You need to make like a note of the cemeteries this happens in, and then look for repeat activity and look for anything else going on weird in this particular cemetery, man. Because that's some like John Carpenter type crap right
Yeah.
there. What's the John Carpenter in the Apocalypse trilogy? The one with like, I just can't believe I'm forgetting this right now. Not The Thing. Prince of Darkness. That's some Prince of Darkness stuff right there.
Yes, it is.
That's some really grim stuff. I don't know why you told me that. And I have just, and we deal with a lot of weird stuff, but I have not been able to stop thinking about that ever since you told me about it. And I'm kind of, I don't know, man. And it's weird because I found that more disturbing and more interesting than the kids seeing Bigfoot in the Louisiana forest. I don't know why.
It's kind of more visceral, isn't it?
Possibly literally visceral. You know what I'm saying? That might be a literal description of it. So
Robert Livingston said, I think it's really weird that only a month ago, the Vatican warned people that there'd be an uptick in paranormal activity.
It's yeah. And it's weird because everybody thought that warning when they first kind of hinted at it was going to be related to the UAP phenomenon. And it was, and then it came out and they talked a lot about Marian apparitions. The Virgin Mary, apparitions of the Virgin Mary and how that should be investigated, dealt with, processed. But there was a lot of stuff in there going, and the other like strange phenomenon that kind of like comes along as well, that, there's going to be an uptick in that. I didn't even put two and two together for that. Surviving the strange asked, are the sky trumpets anything like the sky booms in Florida? We have a couple of places where, if you've ever heard of the Seneca guns before, these like weird phantom booms that have been going since the Native Americans were in the area, they continued in with the Europeans, that people hear these strange booms. People always come forward going, oh, it's dynamite. They're blasting mines. They're doing this. I'm going, people were hearing this before there was dynamite on this continent,
We have an early video where we actually captured this. We were actually getting ready for our night investigation.
And
this is kind of a pattern, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like we get ready for our night investigation. We set up the camera and we're like just babbling to each other and putting our headlamps on and everything. And then all of a sudden something happens.
Boom. But the sky, so I don't know if those are the sky booms that you're getting in Florida, if they're similar to what we get up here. But the sky trumpets literally sounded like trumpets, like these. It had a very apocalyptic feel to it, and there were some legit cases of it, of people standing there, recording with whatever, and you saw other people around them looking up. It was obvious a lot of people heard it, and it was just these weird sky trumpets that people would get this feeling of like impending doom when they heard. And of course everybody's just going, it's the apocalypse, it's the end of the world, it's Armageddon, it's Judgment Day. And then the fakes started to roll out.
Yeah.
And that's where you would have people going, oh my God, y'all, do y'all hear this, y'all? Oh my God, y'all, it's the end of the world, y'all. And they're filming. And then
all of a sudden they get rickrolled.
or you just see people just walking down on the street, not paying a bit of attention. Yeah. And I'm going, you obviously piped this music in afterwards and didn't think to like not film a street where there were normal people just walking. So I don't know if that's what you're dealing with down there, but I mean, the sky trumpets, you can find the early, real legit examples of that.
And they're very bizarre.
They're bizarre, man. They're bizarre.
Alan Howe said, Joe, what do you think about CERN causing some of this strangeness?
What's weird is that.
And thank you, Alan Howe, for that as well.
Thank you for that, Alan. You know what? We need to do a deep dive on CERN and what they're doing there, because I hear
there's a lot of misinformation
on both sides. Yeah. I hear a lot of people going, CERN's responsible for everything. And maybe they don't understand the science of what's occurring there.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people are just going, you fools, this is just, it's not, you're just latched onto this. This is just a modern myth that CERN's responsible for anything. I don't care what you say. That CERN ritual that they filmed and it made its way online, and then they tried to cover it going, oh, that was just a practical joke. And I'm going, yes, me and 20 of my friends often play practical jokes in deserted courtyards at night when supposedly there's nobody around.
You don't understand scientist humor.
And I'm just, so I do think that I think a lot of this stuff has its roots in some sort of interdimensional activity that is somehow that crossing the veil. And it's not anything new. It's people have talked about variations of that since there were people around to talk about anything. Dreamtime from, the Australian Aboriginals, fairy from like Western Europeans, a fairy was basically a separate dimension that you would go through a bright light and you'd be at a place that was kind of like here, but it really wasn't. It's always been like that. And I think that a lot of this stuff involves a crossing over, and that's why you don't find the bodies, and that's why you don't find a lot of tangible evidence. It's somewhere else. It comes here, it does something, and then it leaves again. And I think that when you're messing with the fundamental like forces of reality, you might increase those instances, and you might cause window areas to become more active. You might cause new window areas to come into being. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, you and I have also talked about this before. We discussed maybe like the Collins elite, that we know for a fact that there are groups involved in the scientific community and in government that are actually seeking to make contact with the other. So whether they do it for power, whether they do it to get ahead of something, we don't really know what a lot of their motivations are, or if even they all have the same motivations. But we know that that activity is going on. And, you can say all day long, these are scientific minded people. They don't believe in all this mumbo jumbo. They don't believe in this woo. There are groups of people, there are sects of people that are being paid to actually attempt to connect to the other.
I'm trying to find...
Marty and Linda Stetz. Let me try that again. Marty and Linda Stetz. Thank you very much for that.
A little tongue-tied tonight too, man. I'm having trouble with it. So
I've had like 5 cups of coffee.
I'm trying to find that. I'm on a message board, a forum that has nothing to do with the paranormal at all. Nothing to do with the slightest. And it's very busy. It has people from all over the world, people from different walks of life. I'm not going to go into particulars on it because I don't want to dox myself. But the subject of UFOs came up one time, and I ended up having like a long drawn out conversation via instant message with this guy who talked about how he was a statistician that worked for the government. And he goes, I don't have anything to do with UFOs, but I eventually got associated with a project. And all I'm going to tell you is, and he was very blunt about it. He was just going, there are people out there that are, and I'm summarizing, but there's 4-star generals and guys in white lab coats who are spending a lot of your taxpayer dollar to make contact with something that they don't understand. Yeah. They know it's there. Some of them think it's demonic. Some of them think it's alien. Some of them think it's something just completely paranormal, but there is the beginnings of communication there. Some of them realize the gravity of the situation. The rest of them are just looking for some sort of like international advantage we might gain by it. On a quick aside, I did see that made its way into the news that there's an international group of researchers who think that they think that when people take DMT and stuff like that, and people always talk about the clockwork elves that they come into contact with. And there's been a theory for a while that they're actually making contact with alien intelligences, these non-human intelligences.
Oh yeah, a higher, more connected.
And they're somehow making contact with like another dimension's intelligences on that. Well, DMT trips or whatever you want to call them are very like, they don't last very long. Well, they figured out a way to basically put people in a DMT IV and keep them in this state for a long amount of time. They're going to start mapping the DMT realm and see if you put somebody under in Japan and they start to map it. Does that map match with somebody in North America when they've never met one another? And they want to see if they can start to catalog this stuff.
Yeah, I heard about this. It's like a slow drip, and that way people can actually describe their experiences while it's
And
happening.
so they're going, and I'm going, is that kind of the same thing that like a lot of these government studies are doing, where they're trying to make contact with these? It seems like so much of this stuff, you're not sitting there in front of a radio tuner trying to like, tune in these non-human intelligences. It seems like it's done it via consciousness. And I'm wondering if more sophisticated versions of that have been taking place for like decades. So Travis Schaefer, you guys did great on the new Small Town Monsters video last night. I will be at CryptidCon. We were in the latest Small Town Monsters LBL release. That is the final one that's coming out before the main one gets released.
And the main doc should be out this month.
Yeah.
Joe and I are featured in that, along with Martin Groves, Dewey Edwards.
Just mundane stuff like Dogman, not this super weird stuff that we're going in tonight on. So thank you for that, Travis. We will see you at CryptidCon, my friend.
Yeah, I heard about that study. And I wonder if at some point there's going to be some sort of roadblock, whether it be a man-made roadblock to stop that study because they might get too close to something.
Well, is stuff like that? See, we've had CERN going on for a while, and a lot of people, when I say a lot of people, a huge number of people think that CERN, everything started getting weird after CERN fired up. Some people are just saying it because they heard it and the world's a weird place and they're repeating it. Other people will sit there and tell you, no, let's look at it right now. When CERN fires up or when CERN does certain things, it seems like there's a spike in follow-up high strangeness activity, paranormal activity, whatever you want to call it. But here's the other thing. If there's starting to be more organized poking and prodding of the high strangeness, is it going to start to poke back? Could that be responsible for increase in activity? And it's weird because I don't think there's a lot of difference between organized occult activity. And when I say occult activity, I'm talking like legit occult activity.
Robes and rituals. Not
people out there messing with Ouija boards, tarot cards, anything like that. I'm talking about like Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons level
summoning,
high magic source, whatever you want to call it.
Jack Parsons really bridged that gap between the
science and sorcery.
Science and sorcery.
Well, here's the deal. And apparently some of the people that are trying to make contact, it's more wizardry and sorcery than it is like scientific stuff. They may be trying to like track the after effects and track the unseen stuff that kind of associates that, with like instrumentation. But it sounds like a lot of that prodding is starting to take a more organized and widespread, and that might account for some of this stuff. There's a lot more people staring into abysses, and those abysses are starting to get bigger and stare back a lot more.
So people are starting to notice it more, or it's starting to push back because it's a response.
It's not noticing. It's flat out interaction.
Yeah.
It's intent. People are approaching this with intent. Intent ain't. Really focused intention is not that far off from worship. Worship seems to strengthen these things.
And that's the same thing with CE5, which we've discussed before, that CE5 is a matter of ritual.
What do they always tell you? Thank you for that, Sheila P. We're greatly appreciative. Thank you so much. What do they always tell you that when you're experiencing hauntings in your home, or when you're out at night walking through the woods and you hear something call your name? Well, A, get the hell out, but don't pay it any attention. Don't interact with it. You're just going to make it stronger.
You're going to feed into
it. Yeah, you're feeding. You are literally feeding into it. Your energy, your attention, the currency of your like soul basically is being given to these things, and it's making it stronger. So that might play into it. It might be the fact that more people are starting to. It's a snowball effect.
What was that phrase? Attention is the currency of the soul.
That's Brother Martin.
Okay.
From Strange Familiars said that. Attention is the currency of the soul, and it ain't that different than actual worship. Worship seems to strengthen these things, seems to strengthen this phenomenon. Attention seems to strengthen this phenomenon. Now, not only do you have more of just the man and woman on the street paying attention to it, you now have organizations with resources and technology and the ability to do more. And now they're starting to like...
And they're focusing on doing something.
This is every bad 80s horror movie known to man, This is this is like reanimator type stuff. Some doors are best left unopened.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's just this rush of, we need to open as many doors as possible, whether it's artificial intelligence, making contact with non-human intelligences, whatever. And again, those two might even be intertwined. I still think that when we get to the point of getting intelligent AI, it may not be the machine that we're communicating with at that point. Is something else going to use that network to come across and speak to us? And we think we're speaking with an intelligent machine. We might be speaking,
and we think we have control over it.
We might be speaking with something older than mankind that hasn't had the ability to really interact with the world. What do you always hear about? Empty vessels don't stay empty for long.
Mm-hmm.
Possession. People tell you that if people you hear, and it's so across the spectrum. People who claim to astral project. Well, I can't stay out too long because something will slip inside my body. Possession cases. You know what I'm saying? You are weakened to a certain extent that something slips in there. You find it in folklore. The Jewish stories of the golem. You make an empty man and then you allow something to fill it. And I think that at the end of the day, you're going to have an empty, soulless intelligence that something slips into. And I still think that there's so much stuff that on the surface doesn't seem like it's intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
But then you start to look at it and you go, damn, it's all connected, and it's all making it's making very fertile ground for high strangeness and the other, whatever you want to call it,
mm-hmm.
paranormal activity, whatnot. And it just seems like it's snowballing. It seems like it's gathering power, and it seems like, are we going to start seeing more and more cases like this, more and more news stories like terrified teens spot Bigfoot, and all of a sudden these stories start to become more commonplace? Things like that used to get a lot of chuckles, and they were basically ran as like, funny human interest stories, like they were done very tongue in cheek and comically. And now they're kind of just taken seriously, and then you're on to the next story. So,
and as you mentioned, that attention is currency of the soul. You say that there's these people, these elites that are looking into this and actually dedicating time, money, power to it. You also have the everyday person like you and I that are paying attention to this in a very intense way. But you also have everybody out here who has an interest in this. You have these huge groups of people. We have all of these conferences. You have all of these gatherings of people, major gatherings of people, where people are focused on this one thing and really feeding into it as well. So it's not just the elites that are paying more attention to this. It's everyday people out there who have more access to this information, who are feeding into this.
So, hold on. I have not been paying as much attention to the chat as I can, and there's a ton of good stuff in the damn chat. Wow. I always go back to, there's a book series called Monster Hunter International, which is about private contractor monster hunters. It's like hilarious. It's great. It's a really good book series. And basically there's all manners of monsters and cryptids and paranormal stuff out there. And there's small groups of people that basically hunt them for money. And the government pays them bounties for killing these things. And part of the reason why they're doing it is because they're trying to maintain a cover-up. Because they have to maintain the cover-up. Because people are always just like, why don't they just tell us the truth? And in this particular made-up universe, which might be closer to reality than what we think, they have to maintain the cover-up. Because the more people that are aware of it, it strengthens it. And more of the activity starts up because of the increased in focus and attention. And eventually the real big major stuff that's like world ending can start to cross over. So basically the more of these smaller entities that you have coming through, the more people start to believe in it. And then the larger activity starts to come through. And they're literally trying to keep things like Cthulhu, like God level, like Lovecraftian entities from crossing over. Because they can't. They're sealed away right now. But the more people start to pay attention to it, that attention, that mental energy makes it easier for the bigger stuff to come over. And I always thought that was like an interesting concept. And it was just, it was an enjoyable work of fiction to read. But the more we do this, I start going, maybe
better start believing in MHI because you're living in it.
Because you're living in it, son. But it's just weird because I keep going. Is that what's going to happen? Think back. I mean, it seems like we used to be in such closer proximity with the supernatural. And then, the age of reason came around, the Industrial Revolution, and people.
And we lost some sort of connection there. We lost our
Yeah.
spirituality. It became something to scoff at instead of something to, revere and possibly even fear at that point.
Yeah. Real quick, Foggy Flyer asked, are sky trumpets only in North America? No, the craziest ones were in Eastern Europe that I saw. There were some ones from like former member states of the Soviet Union where people were doing it, and you were seeing people out there, and I'm going, man, if this is a hoax, they just got like 100 people to play along with this hoax on the street, and there's not one single person out in this view of the video going, what are you guys doing? Everybody heard it, so it's crazy. But we were talking about, used to be so severed from like the supernatural. We have been for years, and now there seems like there's a reawakening of that. And some of the people that have been really big proponents of like the UAP phenomenon have talked about that. They're going, people see and experience these things and they're called crazy. Well, it wasn't until extremely recently in the grand scale of things that seeing these things was considered crazy. This used to just be another reality that laid next to our own. And I think that we've shut that other reality away for a while, and it's
knocking at the door.
It's pushing the door open at this point. And it's pushing this door open in lots of different aspects. Increased Bigfoot activity, increased Dogman activity, increased UAP activity. I don't keep track as much as I should in the paranormal, the ghost world.
Yeah.
Because I think out of all of the little subsects of the paranormal community, that's the one that you get the most faking in, I think, because that gets the most TikTok views and all that. So it's hard to kind of separate fact from fiction. But we get a lot of people, we're not known for ghost stuff, contacting us with paranormal activity on their properties. And I'm going, do you think it's like a Bigfoot? Do you think it's like a Dogman? No, I don't. I don't even know what that second thing is. We've got like really strong paranormal activity on our property, and I'm going, I know we're weird, but why are you contacting us with that? I think it's because they're just looking for somebody to kind of talk to about it.
Of course. Yeah. Especially if you don't know how to handle this that's going on. You don't really have a grasp on what is this, where is it coming from, and what can I do about it?
So anyway, I'm kind of going through the chat here. We really need
Could you give me 5 seconds? The coffee has called.
Yes, go ahead. That's fine. Martin Groves, our boy, the rise in paranormal activity is simple. The veil has been lifted. Those with open minds shall see and report more and more. I think it's going to get to the point where it's not even, I think it's going to get to the point where even the people with open minds are going to not be able to deny it as much as they have done up until this point. And I've talked about this in the past. I used to run a bar in New Orleans, the French Quarter, and I've always been into this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And we would get into conversations, and you would have people that would just be like very scoffing, very aggressively naysaying the possibility of any of this stuff taking place. And then they get a few drinks in them, and then they start to all of a sudden tell you about things that happened to them that shook them to their core. And as a result, you either get very curious or you get extremely harsh with your criticism with it. And that's the route that they took. I think that people that have taken that sort of route are eventually going to get to the point where they can't deny things large and small that they've encountered at this point. This is a great one.
Have you banned anybody yet?
I have not banned anybody. I don't know, but I haven't really been in the chat that much, so I don't know. But Lady Wolf's on the job in here tonight, man.
Here
so
we go.
Jesse and Joe, what about apparitions of Nuestra Senora de la Santa Muerte, Our Lady of Holy Death? None of these content creators will touch that topic. I don't know if you guys are the exception. That is something that has skyrocketed.
Yes.
The cult of Lady Death there has been an increase in Hispanic populations in a lot of areas. And along with it, there has come, and it's not even involved with Hispanics nowadays. That's kind of like crossed over into other, like, cultures that are around here. But this cult of Lady Death.
Do you think this is also connected to, you were mentioning the apparitions of Mary that you were mentioning?
Yeah, those are. There's a reason why the Vatican
connection to that.
There's a reason why the Vatican had to put this direction out, because Marian apparitions are on the rise as well. Marian apparitions that are not easily debunked are on the rise as well. But you know what? That's a topic that I'm aware of, but I'm not that knowledgeable about, other than the fact that it's on the rise. That might be a good show topic one night to do, because that's another thing where a large portion of the population is kind of gravitating back towards that. And there are apparitions of that. And whether that's an offshoot, that would be considered an offshoot of Marian apparitions, or if that's a completely separate phenomenon. But I thought that was a great thing. We need to look into that a little bit and kind of try to. That might be a topic of conversation one.
And that would be a departure from a lot of this other stuff, and kind of give us some new information on a completely.
Marian apparitions are extremely interesting, because there have been apparitions.
I think in Passport to Mangonia, Jacques Vallée mentioned that the apparition, was it the Guadalupe, that has a lot of similarities to alien abduction.
It does, and it's
phenomenon.
You have had apparitions from going back to pre-Hellenic cultures. Ishtar, Astarte. This feminine kind of like apparition that basically the names change, but the actual qualities of the experiences don't really change that much. For those of you that follow like UFO culture, Kim's in here, and the name just escaped me. The Bledsoes. There's a family the lady.
They see the lady. Yeah.
This guy has had contact with an entity that he calls the lady. And if you look at it and you go, that's a Marian apparition. And Chris Bledsoe, for those of you who are familiar with him, there's been a lot of people in power that are very interested in what he's had to report. And they say that, the Vatican, the Pentagon, everybody's very interested in these reports of people reporting interacting with the lady. And those are on the increase. And that's the other thing. It's just that I know we're kind of all over the board tonight, but you kind of have
everything's all over the board,
because it's you can't just focus on one phenomenon anymore and put blinders onto everything else.
Because there's red threads that go through all of them. Now, would that also apply to the woman in white phenomenon that is often associated with some of these Bigfoot encounters?
It could be. I mean, it's generally. I think that the terminology changes. And I think that whatever particular cultural viewpoint or lens that you look at these things through kind of determines how you report it, and determines how it lumps in together. But I don't know. I mean, the thing about Lady Death is just extremely interesting. That's something that we need to look into, because that's something that I'm aware of, but I haven't really focused that much on. EDP's got one here. All this stuff back to Crowley, Parsons, Hubbard, etc. Have you guys heard of Chad Riley and his research?
No,
I have not heard of that. So I wanted to throw that up. So
I will write that down. I wonder if, if you think about all of this phenomenon, it comes from all of these different cultures and all of these places all over the world. They're so spread out and separate. Does it seem like they're all coming kind of together? They're coalescing at this point in time? Or that we're just now seeing the connection between all of these things?
Well, you know what? I see why people get focused on one just aspect of the phenomenon, because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming it's hard to, it's like a spider web. It's not a straight highway. You just start going from thing to thing to thing to thing. I mean, look at us tonight on the show. Been all over the damn place. Because I think the phenomenon's all over the damn place. I think it's weird, because somebody was giving me grief one time going, you interchangeably use the words phenomenon and phenomena, and here's the difference between them. And I go, oh, I know the difference between them, but I don't know the difference between the topics that we talk about. And sometimes I think it's one phenomenon that's many different aspects. And then sometimes I think I'm oversimplifying it for myself, and I'm going, maybe there's a bunch of really weird unrelated things out there that maybe the only association that maybe we're looking for connections when there are none. Okay. Maybe it's got the same association that a housefly does with an eagle. They both have wings and they fly, but they're completely fundamentally different. They just share one aspect, and we're trying to tie connections where there are none. I don't know. This whole thing's like overwhelming. We're feeling around in the dark, and I think the only people that are sitting there saying they have the answers are either doing that to for self-aggrandizement because they want to appear important, or because it's comforting to know they have the answers. All I know is it seems like it's increasing. It seems like it's increasing for whatever reason. All of this stuff seems like it's increasing, and you start to talk about one thing and then you drift over to the other like we have tonight. And I think that's, in my mind, there's some sort of connection with all of this stuff.
Of course.
Okay?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that maybe the only connection is it's something other than human. It's something other than us. Well, in my mind, maybe that's enough connection for us. It's strange phenomenon. So
I think basically all you can do is kind of try to digest this one bite at a time, and try to get through this. Okay, look into this and this and this and this. But then it gets completely overwhelming, and then it starts to connect and collide and intersect. And then it just makes no sense at that point.
And I know this is kind of a weird show tonight, and this is not as simplistic
okay.
as like Bigfoot wood knocks or anything like that. But it's what we're going to with it because it's what we're noticing. John had a comment saying, my son told me that the DMT map has been larger and maybe completed, and it's the same wherever you go. That's the other thing too. If it's just now making its way into the news, it's probably done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's probably been done for a while.
Or it's a derivative of an experiment that was already done years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the shadows.
All right.
In the shadows. Kaiju Ninja 1985 says dimensions are colliding.
And that might be it. You know what? Here's the deal. This might be something that happens. It's a cyclical thing. Maybe it has nothing to do with maybe humanity is such a small piece of the puzzle that it doesn't matter whether we pay attention to it, completely ignore it, build temples to it, do whatever. Maybe it's a cyclical type thing. And maybe this just happens every so often.
Are you ready for a monkey wrench?
Throw a monkey wrench in it.
Maybe this is what happened before the younger dryads.
Maybe that's what happened. Yeah. Who knows, man? I mean, it just, maybe it happens every so often, but it's just that, so chat's like on fire, man.
I know. I'm trying to catch up to it.
Sorry, but anyway, it's weird. And it's just, I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing more little strange one-off happenings, like the black fluid coming out of like graves, that to somebody who's not involved in, and maybe even to people that are involved in this stuff, it's a separate thing. And I'm going, maybe it's like a symptom of the whole weird increase all over the world. And are there other things out there that's going on right now that aren't normal that we haven't stumbled across right now? Because if you weren't a complete weirdo, and you weren't just now kind of really hardcore getting into photography, you wouldn't be looking at these, these groups where people take photographs of old, beautiful, headstones, right, and stuff like that. We never would have stumbled across that. Are there other things out there too that might be other symptoms of
some indicators that this is what's happening? Well, something that we talk about a lot is these strange animal attacks. It seems like those are on the rise, aren't they? We talked about that before, that you didn't really hear about these strange animal attacks, people being attacked by wild dogs just randomly. That wasn't something you heard about very often. But now you're starting to hear about that happening more and more. Maybe that is a symptom of what is going on as well.
All right. I'm going to kind of go through the chat and see where we've got some other input from some other people.
The grave juice. The dog attacks. These are the 7 seals, my friend.
All right. Let's see what we got here.
We're trying to catch up on the chat.
I'm insanely behind on the chat right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to. What?
Juicer's also going to be Gatlinburg and Tennessee Wildman.
Very cool. Scorpius 17 says the Younger Dryas, as you hopefully know, are responsible for the Carolina Bays. Joe didn't know what the Carolina Bays were.
I didn't know what the Carolina Bays were. Jesse had to tell me about it. I'm fascinated with them now.
Telling him about the Carolina Bays. They are a really, really, really crazy phenomenon. If you don't know what they are, it's these oval-shaped indentations in the land, and they're in more areas than the Carolinas, but it's all in this little swath of land, and you can see them in a pattern there, and they make these little indentations, and a lot of them are filled with water, and there's there's flora and fauna that can only be found in those, but they're very, very strange. It's a very strange thing, and there's no real explanation for what they are, and they're all kind of at the same angle, as if some sort of impact occurred and there was like a splash off or a debris field that came off that way. But it would have to be huge.
And there's some weird activity that goes around there. Yeah. I love these geological anomalies, like the Mima Mounds out in Washington, places like that they kind of think they know what caused it, but nobody can really prove it one way or the other. And there's conflicting theories as to what caused these. And then, oh yeah, by the way, there's been stories of strange activity and strange creatures seen around here from Native American times on up to modern day. Yeah. I'm just always fascinated with areas like that. So as soon as she started talking about it, I was just like, that's right up my alley. JD Smooth had asked, have you ever heard of Gary Wayne? Yes, he wrote the book on the Genesis Project. And that's the thing, is that so many religions, folklore, mythologies, so many traditions have a lot of the same stuff going on. And the names might be a little different on them. So, but yeah, I'm familiar with, I'm not as well versed in it as I possibly should be, but
Cryptid Castleberry says the 7 seals of hell.
Ben Holler, Grave Juice, Dogman Apocalypse, Zombies. All right.
Grave Juice.
If this content has not completely chased you all off, possibly think about subscribing.
Kaiju Ninja says we ought to add Brown Mountain Lights to the list.
And like I said, again, I know this is just, but I mean, that's how we've been feeling about it lately, because the summer is usually traditionally it's a lull for us. And that's not been the case right now. And if anything, you would think that we'd be getting overwhelmed with Dogman reports, because we've been involved with all this LBL stuff, and we're getting some of those, but that doesn't mean, why are we getting all this other stuff? And I'm baffled by the amount and the variety of weird stuff that's taking place out there right now. And we can't be the only ones. I think it's just that Bigfoot people that get these sort of reports, they just go, that doesn't have anything to do with Bigfoot. That's crazy. I'm just going to throw that in the waste bin. I'm not paying attention to it.
Or it's the scoffed at, because people pretend like they want to have a scientific mind about something and ignore every piece of data that comes towards them.
I think I have
accepting, okay, this is a piece of data. Maybe I need to change my hypothesis, which would be a scientific approach to something.
New data's come in. Let me reevaluate, regroup, take this new data into consideration. How do I want to proceed with this and go? I think that we're among the few that are just open to all of this. And I'm starting to see why people aren't open to all of this. It's baffling. It's you start to get bogged down in data.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at right now, is that we're in a regrouping phase, because we're going, this is a ton of data. I don't know how to process all of this yet. We're going to pick a path forward and move for it. And then we might go, not the right path. Let's reevaluate. Let's go down this way. But I'm just telling you right now is that some of the stuff you're going to see come out over the next few weeks from us is going to be less, let's pick an active area, go in and physically walk around, see what we can find out. We're going to go more into some of the experimentation and documentation of some stimuli and response type stuff.
Yeah.
Let's introduce some stimuli into an area and see if we can document a possible response from something.
Yeah.
And we've kind of alluded to some of this stuff in the past.
Instead of trying to throw things, go in blind and kind of throw it against the wall, kind of steer in a direction of trying to elicit a response.
Yeah. So what's up, South Force 10? If you're still in here, like I said, we're insanely behind this. And Kelly would like to point out the fact that I'm doing a good job tonight.
You are doing a good job.
I'm doing a damn good job there. So
Christina was asking, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just
Oh, that's good. Christina's saying, are you saying Carolina Bays? I'm sorry, I'm a little mush mouth today. We're both a little mush mouth today. Yes, I'm saying Carolina Bays. She's a native plant enthusiast, and there's so many native plants that only grow
in the Carolina Bays. Yeah.
It's so bizarre, isn't it?
All right, let's kind of get back on here.
We're back. Yeah, I don't know. And just, I don't know, kind of just absorbing all of this too is a bit overwhelming at the same time.
It's just, it is overwhelming. And I understand why people want to block it out, even if it's a lack of imagination or if it's just the simple fact that I think that's why we haven't gotten like movement on a lot of these subjects, is because it's so vast. It's so complicated. You can't specialize in anything. You have to be a generalist to kind of move forward with some of this stuff. I think that, and that's difficult to do, as we discover weekly, you know what I'm saying? When we're just constantly going, I just spent several hours learning something. I want to watch TV for a few minutes. I want to veg for a little bit, but no, then all of a sudden you feel like you're getting behind with this stuff. Carlos wants to know, how do y'all choose locations to research? We are all over the damn place. In case that's not apparent by tonight's show, we will pick areas generally based upon recent reports of activity. Sometimes we will look for areas that factor in with like regional folklore, you know. Sometimes we will look into non-traditional, like Jesse talks about, the non-traditional methods. Do you want to talk about that? Or we'll sometimes look for people who are not involved in the cryptid community and what are they experiencing?
Yeah, so we have a couple different methods, and we did a lot of this early on because we didn't really have a lot of people emailing us or sending us letters or anything like that. But we look into non-traditional sources. You can actually go into forums for fly fishing and rock climbing and all kinds of stuff, the outdoor activities, and guaranteed there's going to be a post or two about somebody having a weird experience. Cemetery enthusiast groups where people find black goo coming out of graves. So you can go in there, and that's kind of how you can find some novel areas to go and investigate, and then compare that to maps of, is there a possibility that something could be here? And then we can go and scout the area and check it out and see if there's any other experiences coming out of that area. And then we'll go check it out and see if anything happens.
Yeah, we look for one of the best places we got was from like a rock climbing enthusiast forum. And one of the guys gave it a name that was tied in with Bigfoot because he had a Bigfoot sighting there. And he basically, and as soon as he chimed in with it, people were going, "Oh my Lord, yeah, does it always feel like you're being watched there?" You know, we stopped climbing there because somebody was throwing rocks at us all the time.
And somebody had a Class A sighting out there as well.
Chris Jackson, thank you for being a member. Finally back after a month of getting my phone snatched out of my hand.
Oh my gosh.
Goddaughter's probably trying to keep him from being influenced from those weird Hellbound Holler people. Welcome back, Chris. Thank you so much. So,
well, if you want to throw yourself for a loop for some of this too, there's another little element you can throw into it. You know, what about the idea of the trickster element being involved in this? And maybe some of these are false leads, or some of these are, there could be that possibility.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the trickster aspect of this is probably one of the things that I think about the most, because we've experienced it the most. And with me being the equipment guy, I'm the one that has to struggle against it the most. And so I'm constantly aware of it. And I was thinking this week, I'm actually working on the recorder that we've got running in the library right now, because I'm doing a new variation of our long duration recorder to see if I can get one to work in the area of the Grove that has defeated. You guys have seen two, and then there's a third one that did not work there that worked everywhere else. So I've got a new variation that I'm trying to work.
World recorder champion.
The Grove 3 Joe 0 so far for recorders. So I'm trying to do another recorder in there, and I'm working with it, and I'm trying to look at the previous issues I've had and trying to problem solve them and anticipate everything else going wrong. And I don't know why, but I'm sitting there, and it's our library. So I'm letting this stuff boot up, and I'm just kind of scanning the bookshelves, and the Trickster and the Paranormal, the book is there. And I don't know why, but I'm going, such a weird random thought that came to me. And I'm going, maybe it's not a purposeful and a slightly malicious trickster element. Maybe it's communication and we don't understand the language and we don't understand what it's trying to say. And we don't understand that maybe it's a force that's trying to guide us to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
And we just see the stumbling blocks and the roadblocks and the missed opportunities and the frustration. And maybe that's not it. Maybe it's trying to guide us. I don't feel that way. I feel there's a trickster element to it, but I'm trying to leave myself open to the options at that point as I'm going, maybe try number 4 here. Maybe it's been guiding me towards this, and that's how it guides you. And you don't see it. You just deal with the frustration because I'm a small person and I'm dealing with something larger than me.
You're pretty big.
Or
you're about 6'4".
Yeah, but maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something that it takes. I often feel that it takes enjoyment out of stymieing me.
Yeah.
And it gets me to the point of giving up, and then it draws me back. Gives me just enough to draw me back.
This has happened several times.
Happens almost weekly at this
Yeah.
point, unfortunately.
I want to welcome the Rage of JT to the membership. Welcome.
The Rage of JT. All right.
It's a great name.
That's an awesome name, man. Welcome. Stingray wants to know if we've ever done anything about the Bet Sphere. I'm familiar with it, but we haven't done a show on it. The Bet Sphere is not the only sphere of that type that's been out. That's the most well-known one. I don't know if those are hoaxes, whether those were legitimate anomalous objects that were victim to the old, switcheroo. I think it was the Navy that's been involved with them before. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bet Sphere, take a look at it. Corinne Faust, thank you as every week. Thank you for your hard work. You're both doing a great job tonight. Thank you so much. Not our typical show, but our shows usually reflect where we are mentally. And this is where we are mentally. We're all over the place.
Chaotic.
We're chaotic. We're just right now we're in taking a lot of data and trying to process it as best we can. And we throw it out to you all to get your all's input on it.
Joe's doing a great job. I'm the ombudsman today, so I'm the coffee consumer today.
Boy, not today. Funny how many supernatural occurrences surround the Appalachians when you consider they existed before most life did on Earth. One of the other areas that we're focusing on right now is the Uwaris.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very old, you threw the numbers my way. The Uwari Mountains used to stretch over 20,000 feet high.
20,000 feet high. Now they're 1,100.
1,100 because of the
500 million years of erosion. Yep, that's one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, and something that ancient, some sort of.
And people are always like, "Oh, you all need to go research here," and I'm always like, "We'd love to get there." However, we're in the Southern Appalachians, and the Appalachians are
chock full.
It's
chock full of crazy stuff.
They are coalescing as a focal point of like a lot of this stuff. And it's not just an area that's known for one particular strain of weirdness. There's everything through here. Do you know what I'm saying? So everything through here.
And a lot of this is untouched or undiscussed at this point. I want to welcome KDC as a member to the channel.
Welcome to the channel, KDC. We're going to be having some member stuff out. The Seawood Manor footage is going to be members only. I don't even know if we're going to be able to release that on YouTube. We may have to come up with a different way to share
alternative
that.
means.
I don't even know if we can release that privately on YouTube and not catch any sort of negative.
I think I can to members.
Yeah.
So.
Jonaside, welcome to the channel. Just discovered us. So. Lady Wolf wanted a knife check. We have matching knives tonight.
Yes, we do. You can go ahead.
I have my Cold Steel Espada XL.
I have the Cold Steel Espada Medium.
That was my I have intentions towards you knife. That was the knife that I bought for Jesse right before we started dating.
Yes,
so
it is.
Some girls get flowers.
I get a Cold
Jesse
Steel
got a polished
Espada.
Espada, and that's how we knew we were meant for each other. So there we go.
Damn, where has the time gone? See what time it is?
We've been going at it, man.
My goodness.
I'm trying to catch up.
Good night, Kim Drescher.
Kim Drescher, good night.
I'm going to do
7
last call in a
systems.
second so people can kind of think about if there's any other things.
Yeah,
we're going to
I think we're going to spend the rest of the
before-
time just kind of going through the chat
Yeah,
here.
we'll hit
Anyone
that.
who still compartmentalizes the various phenomena as a waterhead. It's all connected. Thus, I have spake. That's where we keep going back to. And again, I can't rule out that it's. When I got into my rare online argument, which I got into, what was that, 2 weeks ago? And somebody tried to
Yes.
drop Occam's razor on me. I'm just going, I hate people trotting that out. The simplest explanation is not always the best explanation. Matter of fact, if it's lazy thinking, it might be the most complex and unforeseen answer imaginable is what it ends up being. The simplest answer is it's simple to you. It's not simple to everybody else. But anyway,
ask people who have had a string of medical misdiagnoses
if Occam's razor was the best option for them. But so I constantly feel that there's some sort of connection, that even if it's different phenomena, that there's some sort of running thread. I think you're right, Seven Systems. I think that there's, otherwise it wouldn't all be increasing at once. There's some sort of connection there to it all. And I always tell people that, I'm not saying that UFOs are flying here from Zeta Reticuli and Bigfoot's getting out. And although I'm not ruling that out, at this point, but there does seem to be some sort of interconnection somehow with this stuff. Even if it's not from the same source, it's connected.
And I don't know if we're ever going to find any answers in our lifetime, but we're definitely starting to notice some patterns here. And we're starting to put some stuff together.
We are more confused now doing this than we were when we started out. At least then we could pretend we had some stuff, we had some answers and some ideas, but the more we do them, let's see here.
Terry McCullough has an interesting point here. I started wanting to understand some strangeness that was happening in my house. It seems the more I've gotten into it, the more strangeness I experience.
And I think that that's a combination of, it was probably going all along, but it's impossible. So therefore you ignore it. It's impossible. It's impossible. I didn't hear what I think I heard. I didn't see what I thought I saw. It's impossible.
It's those built-in filters.
Built-in filters to it. And again, we need to do a whole show just on how right now some of the best and brightest minds out there are starting to go that reality is not what you see it is. Reality is not reality. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing a dashboard that's been developed by evolution to keep you alive. You're not seeing the true nature of things. You're seeing what you need to see in order to live, to keep the species going.
And sometimes those DMT experiences kind of break those
down.
Those
dropping the filters down. So, all right, let's see what here. Keep going. Sean Collins, I just want to throw this up. You all need to come to Maryland. Historic Ellicott, is that Ellicott? Ellicott City has an old burnt down all-girls school that is super paranormal activity and lots of dogman in that area.
It sounds like a place for Joe.
It's but they I'd love to start going to some actual things like that, but a lot of those places are just, you have to pay to do it.
Oh, yeah, you have to. So a lot of those haunted places, like the sanitariums, the famous ones that are on all the shows, you have to pay to investigate them and then pay a bunch of money to, if you want to film anything for a YouTube channel. And I understand, like, to keep it up and stuff, but we don't do a lot of indoor. We don't have never done any indoor stuff. So. We passed by an old jail the other day, and I was like, oh my God, that could be our first indoor.
Todd Scoble, what's the name of the device that you use to detect different frequencies, like the 1.66 frequency? We use spectrum analyzers. We have 3 different spectrum analyzers right now. Eventually, I'm going to get my 4th one, which is a completely different type of model. And then we have, you guys haven't seen it yet. We were going to use it at Brown Mountain, but the weather and then the crackheads conspired against us to bust it out. But
Isn't that always the case?
I've got an SDR set up, which is similar to, it's always cool when we do stuff and then people go, hey, that's on Skinwalker Ranch. Because I go, hey, I feel like we're kind of heading in a good direction with that. But I've got an SDR set up as well that runs off a laptop. It's software-defined radio that looks for radio signals, which is apparently what they use. Yeah. And I don't know if it's the same model that they have, but so we've got all of those. And then there's a new spectrum analyzer out that I'm going to eventually be getting.
It's going to be a house full of spectrum analyzers.
And Suji, thank you for all the new members tonight. Thank you for joining our dark little twisted corner of YouTube. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, hang on for the ride.
For those of you that are just joining us, it's usually not this out there, but it's reflective of, we're field researchers. We're not YouTube people. We're field researchers. We're involved in field research. We are, when I say involved with it, it is literally, if we are not sleeping, eating, or working our day jobs, it's what we do. So this show reflects where we are at as researchers at that point. I can't even say researchers, we're investigators. We investigate it. And this show
researcher sounds a little passive.
Yeah, reflects where we are as far as that investigation goes. And the investigation right now we're trying to absorb the enormity of what's around us and what's taking place around us. So
Michael Tovar, thank you very much
Thank you for that.
Let's keep the weirdness and strangeness going. Thank you, Jesse and Joe.
But I think this is the thing, and we always talk about it. I always say that I think it's this lack of the global awareness of it that causes all the problems that you see in these different communities. You have a Bigfoot sighting, and it seems like an animal.
Mm-hmm.
It was eating berries, and then all of a sudden it sniffed you, and it looked at you, and it got startled, and it ran into the brush. And you're going, what I saw was just biological. It was an animal. And then I have an encounter that's anything but just a undiscovered ape type of thing.
A UFO drops down.
It's associated with lights and mind speak. And you look at me and you go, you're lying because that's not what I experienced. Therefore, you must be lying.
And then it sows the seeds of chaos.
And then I go, well, what I saw was definitely not a monkey. You're lying. And nobody can come to grips with the fact that there might be more than one type of weirdness going on out there. And I think that causes a lot of problems. And I think that God only knows what we're going to be into next. It's not going to be lake monsters, but
never
everything else, the sky's the
on
limit.
principle.
I agree with you on that. At this point, we've painted ourselves into a corner.
We have.
We could get somebody contacting us going, there's a lake. It's like less than 100 miles away from you. Here's the video I'm getting.
Spite's a motivator.
This is happening all the time. And we'd have to go, you don't understand, sir. I'm not doubting the activity that you're experiencing. We can't come check it out. Well, why not?
Our hands are tied.
Our hands are tied in this matter, sir. Please.
KDC is asking, what is Hellbent doing for Halloween? We have a few ideas. We have not settled on one yet, but we're going to do it big.
We're going to do it big. We want to try to get somewhere that has at least enough signal for us to throw up our signal booster from Steve Causey and try to do at least somewhat of a live stream.
Yeah. The last two Halloweens, we were in the LBL.
Yeah. So I don't know where we're going to be to at this point. I don't know where we're going to. I don't know. We've got a couple ideas of somewhere, but we're going to be somewhere at this point.
Kaiju says we're the real Mulder and Scully.
That's pretty cool. Thank you. So
horny alien man.
Trey B, have you guys experienced or noticed a correlation between increased solar activities and cryptid paranormal activity? Increased solar activities, the phases of the moon, dates that have a significance with folklore or mythology. We are always out on
summer solstice,
the equinoxes, Walpurgisnacht, which is April 30th, going into May Day. May 1st is always very culturally loaded. But yes,
and these are all holidays for our family as well.
Yes, indeed, they are. So yeah. Sue Powell was talking about no videos for us commoners. I think she's talking about the Seawood Manor. We can't release that.
No.
We talked about it publicly, and our channel.
We already got a strike.
Our channel almost got shut down.
Yeah.
So. There's literally no way to do that. We do the member stuff in areas where we can't release those live streams publicly for safety reasons, and this one isn't for a physical safety reason, but we would like to continue doing the channel.
Yeah, channel's over if that goes public. So Pork Chop Express has one. This is you. This is a you thing.
The 1.65 gigahertz is the center frequency of the L1 band of the Russian GLONASS. I think I pronounced that right. GPS system, and a good reason why they may always have GPS anomalies. It is also, that 1.6 gigahertz signal is used for particular satellite communication portions of it. It's used to communicate with I don't want to say objects, but things that are in orbit, like the space station, some communication. There is some GPS stuff that goes along with it. It's well, not a naturally, but it's a signal that occurs, and there are things on that band. What's weird though, and I can't really speak with Skinwalker Ranch because other than knowing some of the equipment they use, I don't really know that much about what's going on. We don't watch the show.
Yeah.
I get tidbits from you guys a lot of times on the show, and then I go and look it up on YouTube, what I can find. It seems like a lot of the good stuff doesn't make it onto YouTube because I guess they just put the stuff to kind of tease you to sign up to pay for it, which,
we just don't have a lot of TV time.
Don't have a lot of TV time, but from what I understand about them, it's that they experience that signal when they experience other weird stuff, and that we have found that signal in areas where we've experienced strange activity. And then after the activity is done, we don't experience that signal anymore.
Namely in the Grove that occurred.
In the Grove and in that spot in North Georgia.
Yeah.
We've had that happen. And then when there's nothing weird going on, we don't seem to get that signal. Now again, I'm assuming that their equipment, they have equipment you don't see on TV. I'm assuming with the funding they have.
Yeah.
Because from what I've seen, the stuff they're using ain't that far off from what we're using. I'm assuming they have better equipment that either I haven't seen or it doesn't make its way on TV. So we've had some variation in that signal, but we have had that. We've had a 1.6-ish signal show up on our spectrum analyzers in conjunction with weird activity. And that's the only thing I'm looking at. That's like saying that, well, fog and mist occurs naturally. So therefore, not all fog, and then you have other people go, I have weird activity and a mist seems to come about every time it happens. So just because it occurs naturally, I don't think it rules out that there's something strange going on with it. I think you may be saying that. Are you saying that they're picking up that because of like Russians like activity out there? I don't know. I really need to sit down and watch that show sometime so I can speak with more authority with this and kind of know what we're talking about.
George Leonard asks, when did you notice quartz in areas of strangeness and where did you make the connection? I think it was in our North Georgia research area that we started really seeing a prevalence of white quartz and making that connection. We just started observing it everywhere.
I mean, we saw it and I'm trying to think of somewhere we've experienced a lot of weird stuff at, and quartz has not been there. I can't think of anywhere off the top of my head. It just seems to go. It seems like the more exposed quartz that's there, the weirder the activity is. Not all the time, because we'll sometimes go into these areas where we experienced something strange before and nothing weird happens at all. But there's a pattern there somewhere. There's a pattern. I don't know what that pattern means. Just like I don't know what that 1.6 gigahertz signal means. But there's a pattern there. It's just trying to figure out what that pattern means. So let me know, Pork Chop. Throw it in the Discord if nothing else. What you're talking about on that? If you're talking about maybe there's some sort of, they have said it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't they said at Skinwalker Ranch that they think that they're under surveillance, government surveillance? Is it like our government they think is surveilling them, or foreign governments, or
I don't know.
I
haven't seen the show. I have no idea. I do want to welcome POC ETV to the membership.
Welcome to the membership.
That is way cool. Thank you and welcome.
Appreciate it.
There's a lot of videos for you to catch up on in the members section of our channel. There's a lot of stuff from the LBL and then a lot of little tidbits. And after our premieres of our public videos, we do live members only after shows, and you also get ad-free versions of every one of our videos.
The Rage of JT says, I know it's not good to speculate, but I genuinely believe that you all caught a Dogman on that infrared picture. He's talking about the thermal image.
Yeah.
In the LBL. It gave me goosebumps looking at it. I can tell you what it's not. Somebody had said it was a stump, and I'm going, it's not a stump. It's not rotting vegetation. That thing was so much hotter than the Kentucky woods at midsummer on like a real hot night. Real hot night. So much hotter, and it moved slightly, and then it disappeared. It's not a stump. It doesn't look like a coyote. It doesn't look like a bear. It doesn't look like a feral hog. It doesn't look like a domestic dog.
And it's giving us
doesn't
a
look
lot
like
of
a deer. It seemed to behave intelligently. It was observing us while our attention was supposedly focused on whatever we were hearing in the woods. It was big, and it seemed to know that I could detect it when I started fumbling with my flashlight, and it either dipped down and moved off, or it dipped down and stayed there. And it was there when we left out, and we didn't realize that gully was there until the next day. So I can tell you whether that was a quote unquote Dogman, I don't know. The ears and the snout and the size of it resemble what people report seeing in the LBL.
Sure.
But to this day,
it's very bizarre.
We get people.
That's one of our weirdest things we've ever caught.
I get people
a lot of weird
debunking
stuff.
it on on almost a weekly basis.
It's a stump. The stump crowd.
The stump crowd. So
all right, guys. We're gonna wrap it up. I want to welcome all the new members who have signed up,
and the members who have returned with us. Cynthia,
and
thank you so much.
Everybody who has stayed on board for this wild little journey. We really appreciate you guys. You guys make it possible for us to continue with this work and go out and travel to these locations and do this work. I am working on the first URI video right now. Hopefully that will be out shortly. That'll be out soon.
Pork Chop thinks it's the Russians.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, because I don't know anything about that, and I'd like to learn about that. So there you go. Unmarked helicopters flying around. What does that sound like? One of the things you always hear about the LBL is the near military fort. They have helicopter training that takes place out of there. And I'm sure that's some of what people are seeing in the LBL. However, if they're doing training, then why are they really focused on people who go into these certain areas?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Why is the training taking place in areas that also have a bunch of reported Dogman activity? And why do they seem to pay careful attention to the people that go into those areas? So interesting.
Sometimes the coincidences pile up to the point that they're not coincidences.
So
but thank you guys for joining us.
Sorry the show was so disjointed.
Oh my goodness. I think I had a good little through line to it.
Yeah.
We like doing these themed shows where we kind of laser focus on one thing and kind of get all this information out there and bandy around some ideas with you guys. Remember the Tennessee Wildman CryptidCon is August the 10th.
Tennessee, it's not Tennessee Dogman. It's Tennessee Wildman.
Did I say Dogman?
We've got Dogman on the friggin' brain now.
Dogman brain. No, it's
Dogman
Tennessee
brain.
Wildman, and CryptidCon is August the 10th. And CryptidCon is in Lexington. I am a mush mouth today, aren't I?
I know, man. Hey.
Lexington, Kentucky, November 23rd and 24th. We're going to be at those. And the links are down below in the description if you guys want to join us for those. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope to see a bunch of you out there.
And we don't really do when we're telling you folks that we're there, we're not vendors. We don't sell stuff. You know, we're not trying to get you there to sell you like a hat or like a keychain or something.
I might rent you out. I don't know. We'll see.
What's that now?
Rent you out.
Although I think we are going to have hats there. You know what I'm saying?
For pack muling.
Yeah, but we're not really vendors. So
we're not going to have hats. Yeah.
We're not, we go to these so we can like interact with people and meet people and just kind of get some perspective from y'all.
But keep an eye out. I should have the first URI investigation video out soon. So keep an eye out for that. I'm excited for you guys to see that. And y'all be careful out there. Keep an eye out. You got any departing words?
I got nothing.
All right. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Good night, everybody. Be good out there. And we'll see y'all later.